All right, hello all. Another day, another lockdown, and this lecture is going to be slightly different. Going to talk about industrial minerals. So they're not as sort of sexy, if you like, as metalliferous minerals, but they're extremely vital and quite lucrative. Think about all the things that go into building material, road base, concrete. Abrasives, you name it. They all have a role, and we need to find them. So it's something that's often forgotten about, but is extremely important as a geological resource. So, basic ingredients of many industries. They can include things like aggregate to make roads or cement, or they can be things that are used in construction. Asbestos is a common one that's probably not used very much anymore, but that's a classic industrial mineral. We also have things like phosphate for agriculture. We have things that go into technology, like silica, quartz, sands, medicine. So variety of uses. And so quite important. Most of this stuff is mined through superficial operations. Commonly we'll see many quarries along roadsides that are used for road aggregate. And this makes up the majority of mining, done at least in New South Wales, but broadly speaking, everywhere. It's often forgotten about. So it's an important aspect to think about. So here's just a view of New South Wales and where some of the industrial minerals are dispersed, and different commodities. So up around here we have things like limestone at Atunga, where that skarn is. We have diatomite further out to the west. We might get gypsum localities. There's some gypsum localities down here in the Riverina. The far west. We have heavy mineral sands. We have lots of sand mining now off the continental shelf for beach rejuvenation, and things like that. So variety of different aspects, and increasingly lucrative and important components. And this is just showing industrial mineral sites. You can only imagine how many locations of quarries there are in New South Wales. There'd be thousands upon thousands that are just used for road aggregate. We have other quarries that are important for limestone and things like that for making paper, bleached white paper. I know there's one of them around Bathurst. So many different uses and very diverse rock types that are important. So something well worth considering and remembering. So I'm just going to talk about a few different industrial minerals extracted in Australia. I haven't included things like rock aggregate, because by far they're the largest amount, and we have different uses. Railway ballast is commonly an andesite or basalt. Road base is commonly basalt, sometimes granite. So it just sometimes is opportunistic about what is nearby. Okay, for the first one, phosphate. So where does it come from? From phosphorites. There's an example in Duchess deposit in northwest Queensland. These form in sort of shallow marine environments where you can have upwelling or significant life. You have high phosphate contents, and they can essentially deposit out of the system there and have a phosphate-rich horizons. So it's controlled by its temperature when it is when it dissolves or precipitates. They're the main sources of phosphate. Here are the important minerals. We have things like apatite. Apatite is very common. Calcium phosphate. Monazite has rare earth elements in it. Turquoise is a copper aluminium hydrated phosphate. And we have lead phosphates and things like that. And phosphorites account for approximately 80% of this phosphate. And we have most of the deposits are from the Precambrian to the present, and that's largely associated to life. So what's it used for? 90% used for fertilizers. So superphosphate, very important fertilizer for agriculture, as many of you will be aware. So it's very important that we continue to have phosphate sources as a way to enrich agricultural processes. But it can also be used in things like detergents, animal feed, and supplements. It's good for sustaining life. Okay, next one, barite, barium sulfide. So it's a white, colourless pink, or there's a variety of colours there, commonly pale white. It's quite heavy than most other sulfates and silicates, and it forms in stratiform exhalative deposits. So we have evaporation. We can also get it in veins and cavity fillings in other stratiform deposits. So used in manufacturing of paint. It's also used in high density drilling muds in the petroleum industry because you need a thick, dense slurry to maintain coherency in the drilling. Also used in cement and things like this, or as a filler and wetting agent, and also used in medicine. So quite a diverse application, but most people haven't really heard about it. All right, prophyllite, so aluminium silicate, hydrated. So it's white to pale and very soft phyllosilicate. It's kind of a bit similar to talc. It's soft and slippery, but it's chemically inert and has high dielectric strength, high melting point, and low electrical conductivity. So it can be important application in industrial processes, which I'll get to in a bit, but it's formed in low temperature hydrothermal environments associated with felsic rocks because it's rich in aluminium and silica. So here it is. So it's commonly used in a variety of things, but because it's chemically inert, refractories, whitewares, mold dressings, pesticides, rubber, cement, fiberglass, soap, very diverse usage. Here's an example, very slippery phyllosilicate. There's a one cleavage. So quite an unusual deposit. You need something where we have a lot of low temperature hydrothermal activity of the right rock types to preserve it. Zeolites. So these are very favourable material for chemical processes because they can absorb all kinds of different elements. There's so many zeolites. It's not funny. That's okay. I won't expect you to remember them. But they're a group of complex framework silicates, very low temperature metamorphic systems, less than 250 degrees. It's great for a filter because of its crystal structure, and it also can absorb many elements. So they're sort of considered as molecular sieves. So there's lots of biological and chemical applications for zeolite. And many of the times they can grow them actually in the lab. So very sought after material. So low temperature metamorphic mineral, usually late stage diagenesis of volcanic ash or during low temperature alteration of the sea floor. Used in agriculture to add material to help absorb nutrients or moisture. It's also used as anti-caking agent. Like I say, common in using in chemical cleanup, industrial waste, heavy iron removal, wastewater, sewage treatment, and water purifiers. It's a magnificent filter. So very, very sought after chemical agent. Okay, gypsum, fairly common. It's formed in the precipitation of seawater or evaporation from brines and basins. So, common occurrence for salt lakes and things like that. And it can occur, in these shallow areas. So you probably had a look at gypsum, probably in first year, very soft, nice crystal form. Sometimes we get these unusual rose shapes. So it's quite inert. It's not abrasive. It's good at absorbing and can add gloss and opacity to paper. So that's a common application. But it's also used in a variety of building construction material, convert gypsum to plaster of Paris, used in cement manufacturing, agricultural applications. It also can be used as a mineral filler, glass and paper manufacturing. So very diverse usage, and for quite a common mineral, really. Olivine, we know and love. Here's a beautiful olivine in a peridotite. So derived from ultramafic or mafic rocks, common in the mantle. So it's very abundant in ophiolites like dunite, harzburgite. So along the Peel Fault, we have many occurrences of dunite and harzburgite. Unfortunately, most of the olivine is weathered, so it's not as nice, but we can also find it in layered intrusions, or quite spectacularly as beach sands in places like Hawaii, where you actually have green beaches, very fantastic, full of olivine. So again, very diverse usage. Refractory minerals in furnaces, brick manufacturing, neutralizer for AMD. So this is an important one to remember because it can react to things like magnesite and break down to serpentinites that can absorb other elements. Abrasives, it's very hard, glass making, and because it's rich in iron and magnesium, it's great for fertilizer or rejuvenating soil. So where you go past areas where there's lots of basalt, we know, or on the sides of basaltic volcanoes, we know the soil is richer and more favorable for plant growth. So olivine is a key driver of that. Okay, the one with the bad name. We all know, probably one of the most common industrial minerals that people have heard of, asbestos. So no longer used because of its health hazards associated with mesothelioma and a diverse range of other issues. But asbestos is technically describing a mineral with a high fibrous habit, so a high aspect ratio, so very long and very narrow. So it's not specific to one mineral, but minerals that have asbestos characteristics. So they're typically minerals like serpentine or amphibole are the common ones. So the blue asbestos is croctolite, which is a name used for a type of amphibole called rebecite. So it forms in granite, so these alkali rocks and in regional metamorphosed schists. And this is the one from Western Australia, which has probably caused the most issues for asbestos in Australia. We can also get a calcic amphibole, tremolite, might be in contact or regionally metamorphosed dolomites or things like that. We also can get actonolite in fibrous form, but this is the other common one, and especially for New South Wales and the New England area, chrysotile, it's fibrous serpentine, and it's very common in altered ultramafic harzburgite and dunite. So there's a chrysotile mine, Woods Reef, west of Armidale, that was prominent during the asbestos sort of boom. So it's important to remember it's a variety of minerals and not just one specific, and it's related to their habit. So here's an example. This looks like chrysotile, very fluffy, high aspect, fibrous crystals. So this fibre was what was sought out. It's very heat resistant, so it's fantastic as an insulator, has low thermal conductivity, it resists water, so it was used in waterproofing. It's quite strong, so you can see it was billed as a wonder product to use as fireproofing, insulation, filter and cements. That's why it's all through people's houses of that generation. But unfortunately, mining and installing of the dust causes significant health problems. And so now alternative products have gone to things like fiberglass, carbon fiber, or elastonite, these sort of options. Talc, again, talcum powder. Most people know about talcum powder. We've all probably used it in some shape or form. It's a magnesium silicate, hydrated. It's a metamorphic mineral can form during contact metamorphism of a dolomite or regional or metasomatic alteration of ultramafic rocks. The high purity ones form in dolomites. But yes, because they're quite rich in magnesium, and we have a balance that the calcium moves into different rocks, different minerals, So here's a nice example of talc, green colour, but it's very soft, flaky, and greasy to touch. It's very good at absorbing things like oil and using as a filler material in ceramics, cosmetics, and paints, because again, it's chemically inert. Vermiculite. This one's formed by weathering of hydrothermal alteration of magnesium-rich biotite called phalogopite or chlorite. So it's a low-temperature product associated with mafic and ultramafic rocks. It produces thin, flexible, and elastic flakes, but it's great at expanding with application of heat with accompanying density increase. So used in soil modification where it absorbs and slowly releases water, and as an insulator because of these properties of expanding over time. But, here's some aspects: lightweight for construction, fireproofing, agriculture. So, these are the sort of diverse uses of many different minerals. As you can see, many minerals have similar processes, but they're very important and forgotten about. So again, here, main uses and substitutes, could be used as expanding clay or these perlite expanding material, whereas other refractories, diatomite, or bentonite, these sort of things. Halite forms predominantly again from evaporation from marine water and salt pans. Used in food flavouring. This is probably the most common industrial mineral out there. It's in every household, but as table salt, but it's also used to manufacture chemicals. So, we have to mine this stuff somewhere. So why not look for it? Okay, sulfur. We've talked lots about sulfides, sulfates. Now, sulfur as itself, it's best deposited in its native element in sort of active geothermal volcanic areas where we have sulfur degassing and the sulfur precipitates out, and then we can extract it. So, but it also could be extracted from sulfide minerals. But at the moment, it's easiest just to go to where there's volcanic activity and take it that way. So used to produce sulfuric acid, sulfur dyes, pharmaceutical products, fertilizers, variety of different processes again. Diatomite. So it's full of diatoms, these little microorganisms here with spectacular form. Here's a SEM image of it, quite impressive. So they're just the accumulation of siliceous skeletons of diatoms or microscopic organisms that live in freshwater lakes and marine water. They form in these sort of warm areas associated with volcanic regions, and they're mostly related to Paleogene and Younger Age rocks. And the skeletons have high porosity and low specific gravity. But, these things are great as an absorbent, used for cat litter, odor absorbent, swimming pool filters, beer filters. So quite a diverse range of aspects there. Next time you have people with a cat, we'll be like, oh, this is what it is. Maybe it's come from nearby, at least to me. Clays, again, very common. Broad group, kaolinite, bentonite, and others. Kaolinite's a very common one, forms from weathering of granites and things like that. It's non-swelling, so used to manufacture cement, bricks, tiles, porcelain, china, and paper. Bentonite, smectite, other swelling clays, and also montramillite. They're very absorbent, so they're great for things like drilling fluids, softening water, feed additives, absorbent products, and detergents. So quite a range of options for clay. And finally, limestone and dolomite. So lime, very important for cement, mortar, but we also need these things for steel, chemical manufacturing, water treatment, food processing. But limestone's also great for dealing with acid mine drainage because it's alkaline, helps absorb, change the pH of the water that's flowing out of tailing dams. So this is just some examples of some others. I've gone through a few, but there's a huge diversity of industrial minerals. We know diamond for cutting or cutting material. Garnet as an abrasive, opal as a jewel, magnesite for magnesium. We can have micas, pearlite, feldspars, fluorite for fluorine, many, many more. So it's something that's often forgotten about, but very important to as a geological resource and increasingly needed for increasing industrialization of society. So these things are very important, and they too need to be found, understood, to be able to be extracted at an economic price. So thank you.